Hello, Aubrey. How's the family?
Ooh, the family's great. How's your family, Jess?
So good. Actually, um, two of my little nephews are coming to stay with us next week for 4 days. So this is a family thing. My brother. One of my brothers, when his son was growing up, he would send his son up to Oregon to stay with his dad. My family's confusing. There's half brothers and step parents and all that, but anyway, so he would send his son up to Oregon for a month, and now my other brother does the same thing with his two little kids. They come up and stay with their grandpa for a couple weeks and uncle for a couple weeks. They stay with us for like 3 or 4 days.
Amazing. I love
Yeah,
that.
so cool.
Nice. They must live somewhere hot where they're trying to get their kids somewhere cooler. It's like go to Oregon where it's nice.
Arizona, baby.
Yep, I know that. I know how that goes.
Yeah, they live in Flagstaff.
Nice.
All right, guys. So today we're going to give you some fabulous part three sample answers. And Aubrey and I have not even looked at these questions, thought about our answers at all, because we want to make this just like it will be on the exam. And on that note, we're going to cut each other off sometimes. Why would we stop each other from speaking more?
Yes, we talked about this not long ago that IELTS has gotten a little more strict about how they time the IELTS speaking exam. So when you get to part three, if the examiner is running out of time and still has to fit in a certain amount of questions, they may have to cut you off in order to ask another question. So this is tricky because these questions can be quite deep and
Yeah.
you may have a lot to say or feel like I haven't even I have to cut you off because they have to ask a certain amount of questions.
Exactly, exactly. So, um, this serves as a good reminder, guys, to get to the point and get to the specifics immediately, like we talked
Right.
about yesterday, right? Don't stay general, don't repeat yourself. Um, we value direct communication in English, and that's part of the scoring system, honestly, right? Get to the
Mhm.
point. So, we're gonna try and do our best today. Aubrey, do you want to ask me first?
Yes, I'm going
All
to time
right.
you a minute. I'm going to give you a minute for these answers and then I'm going to cut you off.
Oh no. Okay.
All right, your first question.
Wait, just to note, guys, the examiner does
Yes.
not time you in part three, though. Okay, like
Right.
they
Good
just
point.
kind of use their own intuition, and they're just keeping track of the time, and it's kind of
It all depends on
subjective.
how many questions they need to get in, right? Whether they're going to cut you off. That's true. So,
Yeah.
all right, I'm going to ask you both. I'm going to cut you off and immediately ask the next one, and then I'll give feedback for both. How's that,
Sweet.
Jess?
Perfect.
All right, ready?
Hmm.
Is family important in your country?
Oh, for sure. Um, I think our I think the way family is important here may be different than it is in other cultures. So, from an outsider's perspective, maybe a foreigner's perspective, maybe it doesn't look like we value family as much as some other people do, but we do. I think the fact that families live in such disparate locations makes it seem like family's not a priority or not important. But it still is. Families keep in touch. My family lives all over the place. But still, here's proof. This summer, my son and I are taking a road trip down to Yuba City in California, and he's going to meet all of his great aunts. And I haven't even seen these aunts since I was like his age. And even though it might not be convenient to plan a whole vacation and stuff this summer, I am making this a priority because it is important for
Thank
James.
you.
Okay.
Ooh, nice. Oh, not giving feedback yet. Jumping right into the next one. How has the size of the family changed in the last few decades in your country?
I think if we're looking at the coasts, families have definitely grown smaller in scale. I think it's a lot more common these days for families to just have one child or just have two children. The one child family is definitely becoming a lot more common everywhere. I think, though, still in the middle of the country, the flyover states, as some say, but I hope that doesn't sound mean or offensive. It is still more common to have a larger family in the middle of the country, but definitely in the places I've lived, at least, families are smaller. It's the cost of living is too high to have so many children these days. So I think a lot of people will just choose to have smaller families.
Nice. And that was only 50 seconds, so I don't have to cut you off, but that still feels like a normal amount. That's a good thing to point out too. It's not like you have to speak for that full minute. You should sort of aim for about that. But if you've said everything you can and you've provided great details and answered the question, you're good. You can stop.
You know what, Aubrey? When I was answering that last question, I was worried I would offend you because you do have a big family.
Oh,
And
that's so
I mean
funny.
no offense.
None taken.
Oh, good. Phew.
It's true. That's happened to me though before because I know people who have a much bigger family than mine. They might
Right?
have like 12
Wow.
children or something.
Hui.
And so if you start talking about large children, you do have a tendency to be like, yeah, no offense, not that it's a problem that you have a very large family. It's fine.
I'm always
Okay.
worried I'm hurting people's feelings like
I
all the
know.
time. Oh,
Oh,
okay. Good.
so sweet.
Awesome.
Okay.
Now,
First of all, this is interesting because just yesterday we were talking about how important it is for your scores, for your fluency and coherence score to use linking phrases. And I want you guys to go back and listen to Jessica's answers again if you didn't notice those, because it's not just like firstly, next, finally. There are so many words and phrases that link our ideas. So Jessica said, from an outsider's perspective, this is so high level. That's a band nine linking phrase to introduce this idea that she's going to share, rather than talking about from her own perspective or, that she's speaking as an outsider. So there's just so many options when it comes to linking phrases. And then she said, I think the fact that, and in her second answer, she was saying, I think if we're looking at the coasts, and these are just such high level, interesting ways to introduce your ideas, to link it to what you said before, and then introduce that, okay, now we're thinking about something different here. Now we're looking at how this affects the coast, right? So pay attention when you're practicing using linking phrases. Search on our blog linking phrases, linking words, right? Because there are so many that don't feel like you're limited to just, those very simple basic ones that actually are not going to push your scores that high because the examiner hears them all the time.
that's such a good point. I'm really glad you brought that up. Because we cannot think of linking words as a list to memorize, right? I want you
Right.
guys to think of linking words as signposts. They're maps of ideas. They introduce ideas, they conclude ideas, they transition between ideas. So it's not just like and also in addition, however. It's like, well, now that I'm thinking about it, actually, there does come to mind, like that whole thing is a transition phrase that I just said, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, exactly. Often your filler phrases will be a good transition. If this,
Yeah,
you have to practice
they're
phrases.
signposts. Totally.
Exactly, right? It's a signpost. It's marking what comes next, transitioning between ideas, because our ideas can be all over the place
Yeah,
as long as we create that map for the examiner so that
right.
it feels, makes sense.
I love it. All right, now, Aubrey, I get to ask you two questions. Okay. How do you think the family will change in the future?
Ooh, tricky. I feel like when I read sci-fi novels, families are always super tiny. I read something not that long ago where a family couldn't be bigger than four people. And so when someone had an extra child, they had to hide them somewhere. And that was the whole basis of the plot. And interestingly, that is the case in some places now where it's discouraged to have more children. And I do have a feeling that that is going to continue, that trend toward having smaller families, for economic reasons, or there are lots of reasons
Thank you.
that,
Thank you.
yeah.
What role do grandparents play in the family in your country?
Ooh, this is definitely case by case basis. I think for some families, grandparents are respected and revered in the United States, but in other family units, not so much, right? They maybe grandparents are in a nursing home and forgotten and neglected. I think that's worst case scenario and it's very sad. So I do feel like there's not a set pattern throughout the entire country. I think one family would be very different for another. In mine, I'd like to say that we do love grandparents. We visit them. We want to spend time with them, but
Thank you.
could be better.
Thank you. All right, awesome. Fantastic. So, staying on this idea of transition phrases, I want to point out a few things that Aubrey said there for you guys. First of all, to introduce your answer at the very beginning, comment on the question or narrate your
Mm.
opinion on the question, right? So, first you said, "Ooh, tricky." That was awesome. Great pronunciation. And then calling the question tricky. Love it. And then in the second question, you're like, "Ooh, this is different. We could take this on a case by case basis."
Mm.
So I like that because a lot of students say, "Well, it's different. There's not one answer," or you want to say like this isn't an easy thing to answer because it's not just like one truth for my whole country. So we could be like, it's definitely different on a case by case basis, or there's not a set pattern. That was another phrase you
Mm.
said. So both of those will come in very handy in speaking part three. And instead of saying like in the past, you said not that long ago. So another great transition phrase. But definitely, guys, pay attention to her intonation. Yesterday, we asked you to listen today and mimic our sample answers. Do that, guys, because Aubrey's pronunciation was so awesome. We have ooh, tricky, and then super tiny. And I do have a feeling this really like up and down emphasis also serves as a sort of transition, I feel like, because it's like
Mm.
when you are moving on to a new but an idea you're excited about, or an opinion that like just occurred to you and you're excited about it, we show that in our intonation as well. We're like, but actually not so much, because when I think about my family or whatever.
That's true, right? We'll change our intonation to be like, however, I do think
Yeah.
that, and we're using that to link it to what we said before. Good point.
Totally. I love it. Again, guys, when we are done today, please leave us a review. You can ask us your burning IELTS question, and we will give you a shout out on a future show. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Aubrey. This was really fun.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.